Hello, family. Welcome to yet another episode of Genealogy with Jesse. I welcome you back. Hopefully, you're staying warm. All right, so let's jump in the tree. Last week, we kind of finished up with the Elizabeth Yatta um, and her four husbands, Wally's mother. Tonight, I'm going to focus on Elizabeth Yatta's mother, Emma Jane Kurswell. Emma Jane was born in 1875. She was born in Ottawa, Canada, actually, in 1875. She was the daughter of John S. Kurswell and Elizabeth Cox. Remember that last name Cox? It's going to come back, and we'll get into that later on. But born in Ottawa, Canada, both her parents emigrated from England. Not sure on those dates right now as to when they emigrated or what ship they were on. Ports that they may have traveled through, but I do know that they lived in Ottawa, Canada. Um, Emma Jane Kurswell was born in 1875. They did emigrate to the United States in the early 1880s. I have records showing 1881, 1882, 1883. Canada Census does have Emma in Canada still in 1881, so um, we can only assume that she traveled um, to the United States um, after 1881. So, anyway, so Emma Jane Kurswell, the mother of Elizabeth Yatta, Wally's maternal mother. So, this would be Wally's um, grandmother on his mother's side. She got married in 1896 to Adna Cornelius Lucia. He's also listed as um, Adna Lucas. They're not married for very long. No kids that I've seen between them. Married in 1896, early December. But we know that she divorces him at some point because she's married to William Edward Yatta. This would be Wally's grandfather, the father of Elizabeth Ellen Yatta, his mother. They are married on April 27th, 1902. In Hennepin County, we can only assume Minneapolis, where they lived for most of their life. We know that Elizabeth was born to them, and Elizabeth actually had a sister Myrtle. I did find in a different tree from somebody else. I'm just going to show you. Here's Emma Jane Kurswell. We're going to come back to her in this tree. But if you jump down here real quick to Herbert Stanley Johnston, these dates are not correct in this tree. Whether they need to do their homework, but she does have four children apparently with Herbert Stanley Johnston, according to this tree. I don't think that's right because we know that Lois was the oldest child, Joyce was the middle child, and then finally Wally was the youngest. They have another son there. I'm thinking that they're confusing that with Donald um, Johnson, who was Willie's half brother. So, anyway, this is a different tree. They do have some pretty decent records when you go back in history here. So, here's Emma Jane Kurswell on somebody else's tree. I'm going to jump back to mine real quick. Emma Jane Kurswell, parents up here, John S. Kurswell, Elizabeth Cox. So let's jump into Emma Jane here real quick. So she was briefly married to Cornelius Lucas Lucia. Then she marries William Edward Yatta. They get divorced at a certain point here, sometime before 1915, when she marries John Evans Askey. I do have records of her having children within the house with the Askey family. I found a divorce record. Can't remember what year this is. It looks like 1925. If you look here, Emma Jane Askey gets a divorce from John Askey. This is very rare that they would actually report this. It's really hard to find divorce records, as I've said before. This is actually printed in the Minneapolis Star, which eventually turned into the Star Tribune um, in 1925. So jumping back here to the tree. So they get divorced in 1925. Looks like they're married for about 10 years, no children to speak of that I've seen. And then finally, she does marry Thomas J. McDonough in 1931. Her headstone is McDonough, I believe. I don't have that right here handy, but she is listed that as a McDonough in Minneapolis city directories, whatnot. He dies in 1949. She dies in 1951. So we know Wally's mother was married 4 times. We know Wally's grandmother on his mom's side was married 4 times. The family tree just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's even more and more interesting every time that I dive into this stuff. If you guys have any questions at all, let me know. Again, trying to do just these little brief videos just to remember our family tree, those people that made us who we are, and where they were at throughout history. If you have anything to add, any comments, questions, critiques, criticisms, I'm always open to that. So I'm just going to finish up here real quick, showing that some of this is valid from another family tree. We knew that her parents, John S. Criswell, Elizabeth Cox. Side note, her brothers, actually Frank Cox Criswell and John Cox Criswell, also known as Scotty, were actually involved in a vaudeville act. We can only assume that vaudeville being big as it was at the turn of the century, just prior to the turn of the century, through you know maybe the teens, whatnot. Maybe that's how they made their living. Maybe that's how they passed their time. Who knows? But sounds like a lively family that Emma Jane Kurzweil, Wally's grandmother, grew up in. I will, as always, leave you with a few photos here. Here is Emma Jane Kurzweil. This is in Monterey, California. Not sure on the year on this one, but I believe that's with her sister-in-law, Minnie. Here's a friend, Emma and Jack, outside of her home. Jack Hurley, I guess, is his name. Here's Emma Jane with Elizabeth. I'm not sure if this is Elizabeth, Wally's mother, or if it's her sister-in-law, Elizabeth. I would leave that to you to make comparisons between photos and whatnot. Here's a nice portrait of Emma Jane. Again, not sure on the year. Emma Jane in old age. It's kind of funny on the back of this photo. It reads, Sam took this out in the backyard. I think it is terrible. He wouldn't give me time to change my dress. I love it. That's 1944. And finally, this is her obituary, listed as Emma Jane McDonough, age 26, 3121 Bloomington Avenue, survived by Betty Urkel. So we know that Betty was married to an Urkel at that time, and her brother Frank of Berkeley, California. So anyway, again, thank you for tuning in to Genealogy with Jesse. Let me know what you think. Don't be a stranger. And love you again, family. Have a good night.